Hey everyone, it's Blake, and a quick introduction to this episode of the 411 on Wrestling podcast. As you know, the one and only Larry Zonka passed away in May, and he had been hosting this podcast for a long time for 411 Mania. And the staff's tribute episode to Larry is actually the most recent episode of this podcast. But 411 has decided to get this podcast going again. And I just want you to know up front that while I am the new host of the podcast, this is simply a new chapter for the podcast. This is not the new 411 on Wrestling podcast, because I will never be able to replicate what Larry did with his body of work over all the years. And as I've told many people, Larry has always been a reference point for me as a wrestling fan. Before I even became involved with 411 as a writer and a podcaster, Larry is someone who I have always followed. He was the reference point for me for probably every single show that I've watched, and that is not an exaggeration. If I watched a show, I wanted to know what Larry thought. If I didn't watch a show, I still wanted to know what Larry thought to make sure that I didn't miss something that I needed to watch. And I think a lot of people have said that since his passing. I just wanted to say that up front before we jump into the start of this episode, so that you guys know I am not going to try to replicate anything that Larry did, because Larry was a very unique figure in the professional wrestling business. And again, we will continue to link in the show notes to the GoFundMe for Larry's family. If you haven't contributed and you want to, you can find the link to that in the show notes. And please continue to share that to help support his family. And we thank you for listening to the 411 on Wrestling podcast. And let's jump in to this episode. Hey everyone, it's Blake, and welcome into this episode of the 411 on Wrestling podcast. Today on the podcast, caught up with Andrew Thompson of Post Wrestling and Andrew Thompson Interviews on YouTube to discuss a variety of topics in the world of professional wrestling. We talked a bit about Matt Hardy's situation at All Out, AEW's handling of it, and really just the overall theme of maybe how wrestling companies handle these types of things moving forward, and the learning experience for AEW with this particular situation. We also went into what was basically a state of WWE over the past 6 months since the pandemic started, and really some of the positives that have stood out throughout this 6-month period now, and maybe some of the things that haven't worked so well with WWE, both from a business standpoint and also from a television standpoint in terms of the on-screen product. And we also mentioned some of the interviews Andrew has had here over the past several months. He's talked to Christian, he's talked to Vampiro most recently, and a lot of other great interviews he's had, and some of the things that have stood out for him just in talking to some of these stars throughout the professional wrestling world. So let's go ahead and jump into the conversation with Post Wrestling's Andrew Thompson. All right, as promised, our guest today here is Andrew Thompson. He writes for Post Wrestling. He has this great YouTube channel, Andrew Thompson Interviews. And Andrew, welcome in, and I hope you, like many others, are at least taking control of your intellectual property and don't have anyone coming after that right now.
Man, Blake, I appreciate you asking me to be on, man. It's always a great pleasure to be, just to ask to do stuff like this. I always appreciate it. I'm looking forward to getting into the conversation. And I do have the IP to the Andrew Thompson Interviews YouTube channel.
You do, and they are yours. And we'll talk a little bit about those later on, because you've done a lot of great interviews here, and we want to talk about some of those. But let's start off with this. By the time this airs, it'll have been probably a week and a half, I guess, or so. At that point, after the whole Matt Hardy situation at All Out. And I think it's something that's still being discussed quite a bit, just because that incident in and of itself, you can focus in on that, but it also, I think, brings about bigger questions in wrestling, and we know this, and one of the reasons why is it's wrestling, right? It's an athletic sport where there are lots of high-risk moves and all that. For you, when you first watched it, I guess, what was your first reaction to it? I'll tell you mine in a second, but I'm just curious what your first reaction was to it as you watched it.
Initially, when I first saw it, of course, you thinking, Matt Hardy's doing what he's good at. He's selling. That's what I thought initially was. And then, I probably after 10 seconds maybe of him standing in the exact same position and not moving any part of his body, I was like, ooh, something immediate looks better than, of course, you saw Aubrey Edwards throw up the X, which is the signal for, something seriously wrong. So that was my initial reaction to it.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, and I'll admit, I started the show a little late, and it's one of those. I guess I'm probably like a lot of people where if I'm watching a show, I don't want to be on social media if I start it late because I know something's gonna get spoiled or something like that. And so I started it, and I, like you said, you're sitting there watching it unfold, and then I think for me the point where you saw that happen, and then when you saw him get up. I thought that was the big part because he's stumbling around and just could not stand on his legs. And then, of course, from there, Andrew, it's this guy's climbing a scaffold of some sort. And I think that's what, for me, and again, remember, I started this a little late, and so I'm not on social media. I'm not following it. I'm probably 30 minutes behind. And so, like, as he's going over to this thing, I'm tempted to, like, pull up social media and be like, please tell me I'm not going to pull up something here and something really bad has happened. And so I think for that, like, that was the biggest thing for me because you put yourself in that situation and, it's something where, man, the stipulation and all that, that's fine. And I thought your friends, of course, at John and Way, I thought they did the post-wrestling show, and I thought they brought up a good point. Like, it's one of those things where you have that stipulation where if he loses, he has to leave the company and all this, but we are in an era now where I think stuff like that can be completely thrown to the side in that type of situation. And I thought it was something where, this isn't the late 80s or anything like that. Like, it's completely different now. And I don't know, man. I'm still thinking about that whole situation, even as we're saying a week and a half removed from it, just because of how the whole thing unfolded.
Yeah, for sure. I completely agree with what you just said. I mean, look, we call a spade a spade. It was a poor decision by AEW to allow Matt Hardy to continue. I think that's just what it is. Of course, he appeared on Dynamite. When it was aired, it'll be last week. He appeared on Dynamite, and he addressed the situation and said that he expects to make a full recovery. I don't think they ever said, or he ever said that he had a concussion.
Yep.
I don't think that was ever really brought up. But I just think it was a really bad decision to let him continue. Like, I mean, of course, we don't know what exactly Matt said or his conversation. What was his conversation with the doctor? But I think everybody assumingly, thought what Matt told the doctor is what every wrestler would have told anybody in that situation, is that they're okay. Like, we've seen situations like that with Tegan Knox when she completely blew her knee out, like in the most worst fashion, and she kept telling the referee in the ring, I'm good, and ultimately we all know what ended up happening. And I think that's just a wrestler's thing. When they get hurt, they like to continue going to finish out the match. And another point that you brought up, another good point, and I've seen other people bring up this point as well, is just the fact that he had to climb a scaffold, and then you could see Sammy Guevara had to like lift him up. And I was like, ooh, that's not that's not, like, if Matt, like, if he can't get up there, like, it's already bad enough that he's continuing the match, but if he can't get up there on his own will, I don't think that was a smart idea.
No, that was something, like I said, it was truly terrifying, I think, just to watch that again, for, I guess, specifically for me, someone who was behind. I'm sure there's many other people who either watched the replay or something and maybe had no idea, and just watching that, I think, unfold was definitely scary. And I thought something else, and we won't stay on this too long, but it was something I wanted to talk to you about because it has been such a big issue. And really, you think back, I mean, there have been injuries throughout wrestling, and we know, and one of the things, Arn Anderson on his podcast this week talked about, they were talking about Night of Champions, which 2015, when you had the Sting and Seth Rollins match. And, Arn was sort of talking about, okay, who has the authority to stop these kind of matches? Of course, it's going to be in the hands of the medical team or the trainer, the doctor, whoever's out there. And he kind of talked about it, because that match was something where it's a main event on a pay-per-view. And again, this is 5 years ago, but he's like, okay, well, we know how that match finished. It was one where, Sting gets hurt on the buckle bomb and they go to the finish and all that. But, it's also a very interesting situation because, like he said, well, what's the thinking at the time? You have a main event here for a world title, and do you stop the match? Do you do all this others? And, like, to me, it's one of those things where, man, the people making those decisions, like, they have to make sure they're making the right decisions, because I think, as Conrad Thompson, who of course hosts the podcast, brought up, it's like, what if something like seriously goes wrong with, like, let's say Sting in that match, and it's just, I mean, we know the extent of the injury afterwards, but it is something I think in wrestling, because as we say, I mean, these are guys who they want to do this performance for the fans. They want to be able to pull through and do anything they can to put on the best performance possible. But there are times like that where, man, it's hard to watch that kind of stuff, knowing that, look, this stuff's going to happen because injuries are just normal in this sport, because, again, it's a very physical, high-risk type of deal, and it's just something that you hope this is one of those learning experiences. But like you said, I want to bring up that real quickly, too. I thought AEW did a really good job in terms of the fallout of it, basically having him come out and say, look, this is kind of how everything happened. They weren't basically poking fun at it. They were just saying, here's what it was, and let's move on from it.
Yeah, they did. I'll give them credit on letting Matt just go out there and speak his mind and speak his piece regarding the situation. It's gonna be interesting to see how I mean, because obviously the handling of concussions has gotten way better over the past couple of years, specifically speaking about professional wrestling. But it's going to be interesting to see how AEW reacts to these type of situations. Hopefully they don't happen again, but it's professional wrestling. Like this, they ain't going out there bumping on a trampoline, you know what I mean, or falling off of anything. Like it's so hopefully these situations don't happen again, but it'll be interesting to see how they'll handle it going forward.
It's a learning experience, and look, like we said, at least Matt's okay as far as we know, and it's something where it could have been a lot worse, and so AEW can move on from that, and again, just focus on it as a learning experience, and hopefully do better with those situations in the future, and be able to celebrate those 1 million viewers they got there on their most recent episode of Dynamite too. But I think Andrew and I could discuss the AEW NXT situation another time. We could probably spend an hour, but I don't want to keep Andrew too long because he's got more people to interview. So let's dive into WWE here for a second, Andrew. We wanted to kind of do this as basically a state of the WWE, I guess we'll call it. I mean, it is it's an election year, so we can sort of do a state of the address, I guess, in some sorts. But it's so fascinating to me that we look up and it is mid-September. And it has been 6 months, basically, since, I guess, the whole pandemic started. I'm thinking back, I want to say it was around March 13th or so was when everything started to sort of, go in the opposite direction. And of course, everybody's kind of talked about it. And it's certainly not, a situation anybody wants to make lighthearted comments about. But it does feel like it's been 5 years since then. Like, it feels like it has been such a long year with all of this going on, but it is, in the landscape of WWE, there have been a lot of things happen in these 6 months, and some good, some bad. I think a lot of people would say in terms of some of the best and worst. And I guess for you, as you look at this 6 month period, let's just kind of dissect it at that area. What are some of the things maybe to you that have stood out? And we'll start with the positives. What are some of the biggest things, maybe the biggest positives that you feel like WWE has done throughout this, I guess we can call it the pandemic era still since we're in it. But what are some of the things that have just stood out to you? Maybe the things that you feel like that certainly have been challenges, as we know, with all the things going on, not being able to run live events, have fans, all that kind of stuff. What are some of the things that have kind of stood out for you?
Specifically speaking on the positive front, I think they have a couple negatives attached to them as well. I think that's fair to say. But specifically speaking on a positive note, I will say I do kind of like their adjustment as recently to the Thunderdome. I really think that kind of enhances the overall look of the WWE product, because I just didn't feel like the Performance Center was really cutting it, and I really wasn't like too tuned into that. For the months going into the Performance Center, like I was kind of in and out of it, but still, of course, tuning in, but like wasn't really paying attention. But I feel like the Thunderdome has been more of a big step up towards where they need to go in order to keep people tuned into the product. And specifically speaking about NXT, I was always interested to see how NXT was going to react during the pandemic, like as far as their product goes, because their product is so like based on the reaction of the crowd. And like, I mean, that's all the professional wrestling, but specifically speaking about WWE, it's like NXT is like that. It's like, I don't want to call it like, calling it indie is very like far from it, but it's like, but it's like, you get what I'm trying to get at with this. I can't find.
You have that
Yeah,
hardcore fan base
exactly.
that's
Yeah.
that's so dedicated to what you're doing, and
Exactly.
that's why we love it, right?
Mm.
That's one of the biggest
Yeah.
reasons. So
Yeah. That's what I was trying to get at, and like I was very like, and the takeovers haven't been what they were. You know, like the
yeah,
last one I think before the pandemic was in Portland, and when you look at that card, like you just look at it on paper, it doesn't seem like something that's just like, blow you out the water type thing. But when you watch the show, like, and the crowd is so hot like the whole
yeah.
night, and it just enhances every single match on the card. And I think that's just what one of the big things when you look at the takeover Mania weekend, and then you look at the takeover in your house, and you look at the most recent takeover, like those were good shows, but like, man, it's just not the same. Like when I watch these takeovers, I'm just like, dude, like I'm just constantly comparing it to, when they're in these NBA arenas, or and I'm looking at it and I'm like, just like, it is crazy the comparison between the two, because the energy is not the same. Like they feed off the crowd in these shows, man. So that's probably one of the one of the bigger letdowns. But as far as like other stuff, of course, them releasing that great deal of talent, I
Yeah.
think, I mean, I'm not in of course, I'm not in the business of WWE, so I don't necessarily know exactly what led them to making those decisions exactly. Like you can hear, second party, third party sources, speaking about it, but like I don't know exactly. But it just seems like, that it just like when you look at the investment in the XFL and stuff like that, and comparing it to that. And I heard Andrew Yang speak about this, and that's where I got that point from when he was interviewed by Chris Van Vliet. He mentioned that
Yep.
their investment in the XFL, and they lost so much money off of that, and it's like it's kind of a weird situation, because the XFL got taken down, and then that's a huge loss, and then of course with the amount of talent they had signed to these mega contracts, but it's like that's kind of a situation they put themselves in a way. But I think overall it's been a very up and down year for WWE, I would say. I think, of course, WrestleMania being the biggest of them all, I think that was just the biggest blow, because I can only imagine the live gate, or just the merchandise sales that they were probably going to make just from people being in attendance and at the stadium that day.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, when it first started, of course, the handling of it, with testing and everything, that was something that was talked about a
Oh
lot.
yeah, that was, yeah, yeah.
And I think, to this point, I don't think there's been a lot that's come out in terms of maybe towards the negative side of that, since maybe they've addressed some of those early flaws that they had with all of that. But that was definitely something, like you said, when we reflect back on it, it's just that was at the very beginning. It was just sort of how they were handling it. And of course, you had the same people talking about AEW and certain protocols they had and everything too. So it wasn't just a WWE thing. And I think it's important, and you kind of brought it up earlier, but putting everything in perspective in terms of not having fans, having to adjust so much on the fly, and really, you just said it a second ago, you're starting this whole transition in what is always your biggest event of the year, the one that brings you the most money, and it is, man, it's tough. And for any of us, if we were in that position, it's hard to kind of, what they say, to throw stones, I guess, because if any of us were in that position, there would be a lot of things that would probably be on our plate. But that's why Vince gets a lot of money. It's still something that, I think back to that, and really, too, it's, if you look at it just from a talent standpoint, Roman Reigns wasn't there for a long time. I mean, he's back now, and I mean, for me, he's better than ever. Like, I love what they're doing with him now. And of course, we think too, like Becky Lynch gone after WrestleMania. Like, from a talent standpoint, you're trying to get through this era without two of your biggest stars. And I think that's something that you put in perspective too, in terms of just the the television product. We're not talking about the business side of it in that aspect, but when you just look at it from the television product, which again, I guess too, from a business perspective, those are two of your biggest draws. And so it is, kind of a hit too from a business perspective, not just from not being able to run live events and all that other stuff. But, I guess let's take it to that, because a lot of people have talked about this has also been an era where look, they've gotten creative, and I think that's something. It's not just
Yeah.
WWE; it's many other promotions, right? Everyone's gotten creative. We've seen the cinematic matches. We've seen some of the things that I think we could spend a pretty good amount of time on here with some of the recent additions, and it's hard to believe. I think it's actually been about a month, maybe a month and a week now, since Raw Underground and Retribution both made their debut, and that was. What do you think about those, Andrew? Because I've actually seen, I think I've seen a lot of people, I don't want to say a lot, but I've seen a certain group of people start to come around to the Raw Underground aspect of it. I haven't seen very many people come around to the Retribution aspect of it, but I don't know. Maybe I'll try to be positive and say that maybe there is a payoff coming that is going to make this much better. But believe it or not, like those are two things, though, that we think about. And again, this is more in the short term than in that long 6-month period we're covering here. But what have you thought just about things like that? Because it seems like they had that reset, which it seems like we have in WWE every couple weeks now, where a script's torn up and we start over and we come up with a couple ideas. Specifically, those two ideas. What have you thought?
So on those two, and I just want to touch on a point you made earlier. I think cinematic matches have probably been one of the better things that have happened during this pandemic, this era of wrestling. I think that's been one of the more fun things to tune into, honestly. And Raw Underground, I am interested in Raw Underground. I'm not gonna lie, I like the concept. I feel like now that they've been in it for a couple of weeks, I feel like now is the time to like introduce like something new or like something for these people to be fighting for. Not necessarily, it doesn't have to be a championship per se, but it needs to be something like, just have someone to line, add stakes to it. Like, it could be something like, if this guy comes to Raw Underground, right, and you could do a number one contenders match for the for the US title or something like that. You know what I mean? Like just add stakes to it, make people more engaged. And I'm interested in the Raw Underground. I like that. As far as Retribution goes, I feel like we're starting to hit that point where people are kind of getting antsy as to they just want to find out who these people are. You know what I'm saying? Like, and you can see some of the stuff on social media, and people kind of like putting the pieces together, like by body types and eye color and stuff like that. Like you've seen. Everybody can. I mean, I think everybody can kind of tell. Like the biggest one of the group looks like Dijakovic. I think that's kind of obvious. Like you kind of tell it's him. Yeah. But I mean, I think that's kind of one of the things. I think a lot of people are just kind of like, okay, it might be time to just reveal these guys. And like, and when they do reveal them, like what is the long term thing? Whatever. With Retribution, I'm curious about that as well. I just want to see like what they are going to do with them. But I mean, I can't, like, because I know I can be like, even me sometimes as a fan, I can be one of those like, oh well, I want to see, I want to see who they are, I want to see the big payoff, and then I end up, I complain about that the lack of long-term storytelling or something like that. But like so I try not to be like that sometimes, but I'm just interested to see who these individuals are.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, like you said, because it is, and you brought up a point about stakes and payoff. Like, I think those are two things that, if you just have those two things right, like, you can actually make something that's maybe not a great idea from the beginning turn into actually something that's pretty good if you just have the right stakes and you just have the right payoff. And I think that's the case with both of these, like with Raw Underground and the Retribution storyline is, do they have that long-term plan? And, of course, we'll all kind of look back and say, well, Vince McMahon's long-term planning hasn't been so great over the years. I think right now a lot of people would say that if we compare the top two, which we're talking about WWE and AEW, a lot of people would say that AEW obviously probably does a much better job with its long-term storytelling, and I think that's one of the things that hooks fans is because they do that. And I think for WWE, fans, we all want that. Like, it doesn't matter what company it is, we just want a good story, and I think that's something that always helps. You can have the best athletes, and again, this is a discussion, too, that people can have in terms of, do you just need the wrestling or just need a good story? Like, you need both, right? You need to have both for everything to work. And so I think this is a case with some of these. And we'll see. I'm trying to be positive on Retribution, but I don't know that my positive, in terms of the scale of what it could get to, is going to be as positive as potentially with Raw Underground, although I think both certainly can still use some tweaks, like you said, to get to where they want to go with that. Anything else, Andrew? Anything else that maybe has stood out for you here, just in terms of, we talked about Roman Reigns. I think the heel turn is obviously something that many people have been asking for it seems like, forever now. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I will say one of the things that I thought that really stood out just from the summer here, this 6-month period, I think just the evolution of this Bayley and Sasha thing, I think that's been a really big bright spot because I think it allowed both of them, and again, some people may argue that it took long to get to this point, but I think both of them as characters, and again, we go back to that storytelling, I thought they just did such a great job. Get with what they were given, and that's what we say too. Like, to be great, it's not always what you're given, it's what you turn it into. And I think for them, like, what they've been able to do this summer is they really became the face of, I guess, SmackDown or even some of the other shows at times for several weeks or a month at a time there. I thought those have been two of the things, of course, and the Reigns heel turn, like, that's a layup. We all know. I mean, it's been something that people have been asking for, but I really think that Bayley and Sasha have also been a pretty big bright spot through this period.
Yeah, I definitely think Sasha Banks and Bayley have, definitely in the running for WWE's MVPs of the year for sure. They've essentially got them through the summer for the most part. Working Raw, SmackDown, and some weeks even NXT. And I'm like just over the years, this Sasha Banks and Bayley story has been kind of up and down, like as far as well, not up and down, but on and off, I should say. Like, they've gone, their own separate ways sometimes, and then they bring them back together, and they have these little moments of like heated battles, like they've attacked each other in the past, and like I feel like now is the time when WWE is actually going to go like full throttle with it and go all the way through with the story. I do feel like this Sasha Banks and Bayley feud does deserve a crowd. Like, I think it's like, because have you seen that that WWE documentary that they did about that Takeover Brooklyn match?
Yes, I thought that was excellent. Yes.
Man, that was great. Like, and I love that because like it spotlighted them in a very unique way, and it just shows that they're both, at the end of the day, as big as they are, as popular as they are, as famous they are. Like, that literally just showed you like they are just two massive wrestling fans. Like, that just put that in perspective right there. So and then at that, it isn't bad that they really are best friends. So it's I'm really interested to see how this story plays out. Like, hopefully they don't do the whole thing where like they bring Sasha back after like 2 weeks. Like, I think she should stay off TV for quite some time and try to just delay it a little bit. And then at Bayley, I think next month it'll be Bayley. She'll be 4 year SmackDown Women's Champion. Like, I honestly gotta give Bayley her credit. Like, cause she really has done like a really, really good job at being champion. Cause like, and I'm pretty sure you can agree to this sentiment. Like, just with champions overall in any promotion, like, it's kind of like, you happy for him for a little bit, and then like after a while it kind of gets stale.
Right.
But like with Bayley, I haven't ever gotten that that feeling of stillness from her, and it's weird. Like throughout her the past year that she's been champion, like I think she's done like a really, really solid job of being champion. So and I'm just interested to see where it goes, and of course the Reigns situation that he got going on with Jey Uso. I'm interested in that as well. With the whole cousin thing going on, I think that was a unique position to go. Ultimately, I think the end goal for this, hopefully, I think the end goal for this is going to be a Big E and Reigns program at the end of this. But like just with the bloodline storyline that's going on right now, like like I say about 5% of me thinks that the plan is for Roman Reigns to meet one Dwayne Johnson. Mm-hmm. And like I just can't help but think that's the ultimate goal. And I think Big E might be a pit stop for Roman Reigns. Like it might be a good pit stop, like as far as storytelling goes, but I don't think that's the end all be all for Roman Reigns and him defending that Universal title.
Something tells me WWE will wait to get some fans back before they run a Roman Reigns versus Rock match. But yes, no doubt that would be a lot of fun. And you said, Bayley's character is it's come so far, and it's so interesting to think back to where she was at in NXT, and then you think about just the complete opposite character. And I think that shows you the strength of a worker and a performer is to be able to play two characters that are so completely different. And we've seen the greats do that over the years, and certainly.
I was like, Blake, I wanted to ask you something. So just to get your opinion on this, would you say, would you say that Sasha Banks and Bayley changed the well, of course, like I think they changed the perception of women's wrestling in WWE. But would you? Well, let me ask you. I'm gonna ask you. What impact do you think they've had on how people view women's wrestling, dating back to their Takeover Brooklyn match? Because obviously, independent wrestling has been going on for forever. And I mean, I'm specifically speaking women's independent wrestling. Like, of course, that's been going on for so long. You have promotions like Shine, Shimmer.
Yep.
And so many other different promotions out there. But like specifically speaking about Sasha and Bayley, like what impact do you think they've had on, how people view women's wrestling just because of the popularity that they have? And then maybe not people having the access to watch a Shine or not being aware of a Shine or a Shimmer or, any of those promotions that specifically focus on women's wrestling in North America.
Oh, yeah, no, it's been huge. And I think there's no doubt about it because we think, too, I mean, we talk about the evolution of sort of women's wrestling, but really the evolution of NXT, like as they came along, I mean, we think about it. Like, remember, I mean, we think about when NXT first started, and then to get to where it got to, where you're talking about these two are main eventing a show, and then that becomes the norm, right? Like, it's not something that's a one-time thing. It becomes the norm, and it's not just doing it to do it. It's doing it because they're that good. And I think that's something, too, that people have to keep in mind is it's just not something that WWE would do at this point just to say, okay, this is a first or this is something like this. It's like they're good enough. Like I think there have been many points, and this was even probably before this whole pandemic era, where you could look at WWE television, any show you watched, and you could say that whatever the women's program was at the time was a lot more intriguing than whatever some of the main storylines were with some of the men's. And of course, yeah. I mean, really, I think you could say that. And
that's true.
I mean, it is. And, of course, the Becky Lynch thing helped, and there have been lots of interesting stuff, of course, with Bayley and Sasha, as we talked about. Charlotte, all these others that have come along. Asuka, I mean, I love Asuka. Like, I think she is just fantastic, and she's one of those that we talk about playing characters and being so versatile in terms of what you can do. I mean, she's obviously right up there too. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt in terms of what she's been able to do. So it has. I mean, you talk about those two specifically, but just as a group, I think this group that WWE has or has had, I guess, before Becky left and all that, but like these are fantastic performers. And I think that has helped them come along so much. And like you mentioned, it's helped grow just the overall prospect of women's wrestling in terms of worldwide. And again, even if it's someone who, like you said, doesn't have access to some of these other promotions, if you're just watching it on a WWE scale, it's something that really stands out. And I think that's been one of the biggest things with them is that they've been the two, again, just in this short-term period here, they've been the two that have pushed everything forward, but it does go back so much further than that because they were two of the first ones, as we know, because of that match, because of everything they did in NXT, that have really helped push this whole thing forward.
Yeah, 100%, man. I agree with what you just said. And just like when you mentioned Asuka, man, I was just thinking about I don't like the career that she's had in WWE. Like she has like tallied up a lot. Like she's Money in the Bank, Royal Rumble winner, SmackDown Women's Champion, Raw Women's Champion, multiple times, NXT Champion, Tag Team Champion. Like she is like very, very versatile, and like you can just tell they can slot her in a bunch of positions, and they know that she'll come through. And like I think Asuka has had a fantastic career in WWE, man. Like she's great.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't even remember why I did this, but I actually went back. It was probably about a month ago. I went back and watched her first match in NXT against Dana Brooke, and it was her first the takeover match, and it was like, man, you knew then. She was just, I mean, and again, if you followed her career before, like I know a lot of people did, like you already knew what you were getting, but it's when you watch that just in the WWE setting, it's just, man, you just knew that they were going to be able to use her personality, use the character, and it was something even to watch her back then, which that's been, 5 years ago, I guess now. She was fantastic, and she's still fantastic. But yeah, it's no doubt. I mean, you look at this age of women's wrestling, and we can, you can talk a lot about negatives with WWE and anything you want, but man, they've really seen some of these characters and these performers move forward without a doubt. But all right, Andrew, let's talk about some of your interviews because I want to make sure we get to that before we wrap up. You have been interviewing a lot of people. You're talking to everybody. I know you most recently had an interview with Vampiro talking about his awesome documentary. I would highly check that out. It's a really good. And let me ask you this before we talk about the Vampiro one. What are some of the favorite ones you've done? Because you've had Christian on, you've had a lot of different people on your interview channel there on YouTube. What are some of your favorite interviews you've had?
Most recently today, I would say probably my favorite interview. One of my favorite interviews was when I interviewed James Tillis, and he was the former head of security of WWE from 1997 to 2011. And man, like it was like I did not plan for that interview to go as long as it did, but like me and we just started. So, and then of course the off camera conversations. Like James is a good dude, and like just hearing the stories he had, you know what I'm saying? And it was just a real cool conversation. It just flowed. Like I didn't even realize it was 2 hours long. It was just probably one of the best conversations I've had as far as the interview goes. Like just hearing the stories he had, and it's like sent me a couple of the pictures he had with some of the guys, throughout the years, like John Cena, and he was like one of the pictures he sent me was it was him and Stone Cold like on the way to the Astrodome for WrestleMania, and that was just cool as hell, bro. Like I was just seeing that stuff. And another one of my favorites is when I got to interview Fred Yehi. Like that's always somebody I've really kept a close eye on throughout the years. Like just seeing because I always thought Fred Yehi was one of those guys who never really got like I don't want to say a fair shake, because I would say he has gotten a fair shake, but I mean like as far as like people noticing what he can do and what he can be, and I just saw, and it's always good for me, just seeing I always like seeing like a strong black man or a strong black woman in these very spotlighted spots in professional wrestling. That's always good to see, just on my end. And Fred Yehi is of course one of those people. Of course Christian was another one. That's watch him all the time when I was 5, 6 years old, 7 years old, copying his moves on the couch and stuff like that. So that was like, and I was nervous as hell before that interviews anyway. But those are just three that come to mind. I interviewed Nick Gage at Starrcast last year, which was with like, and the crazy thing about that one is like you see Nick Gage at these shows, man. You're a wild dude, but like I remember when I walked up to him and I asked him, "Can I do the interview?" Probably one of these chillest people like I've ever met. Like dude was like, "Hell yeah, man! Come sit down." I think he took somebody else's chair that was sitting down and like gave me a seat to sit at, and it was cool. And I saw him at the later that night. He had a show in Vegas, and I ended up going to that show, and I saw him there, and he shake my hand and just does talk to me a little bit before he went out there and did his match and stuff. Like it was cool, man. Like, so I've had the pleasure of getting to speak with some people, man, and just say it's just cool. All being a lifelong wrestling fan, just getting able to do that stuff with people you watched on TV and seeing at these shows.
Yep, doesn't matter if you're an interviewer or a fan. There's always that, like you said, you go up to them and there's always going to be that intimidation. It's just like these are your guys, right? And again, it's even for people like us who the opportunity to be able to cover this, and it's just something where it doesn't matter. Like we're all fans and we all want, we all love this, and I think it's just something that it's intimidating no matter what. The Vampiro interview, what was the biggest thing that stood out from you on that? Like you said, you talked to him about the documentary and all that, and just a very good documentary in terms, and that's a guy who's had a career. You want to talk about somebody who's certainly had a career with lots of different places and just what he's been able to do. Certainly, I'm sure that was a very entertaining one too.
Yeah, it was a good interview for the time. I got to speak to him and also Michael Patz, who was the director behind the documentary. But probably the most interesting part was just hearing how Michael learned from Vampiro during their time working together, and all the stories he had from him. And it was just more so of knowing the struggles that Vampiro has had, even with mental health, and the pain that he put his body through over the years, and how that's tallied up on him over the years, and just hearing Michael's perspective from that, seeing him and being around him so much. And of course I'd be remiss not to mention the kind words that he said towards the end of the interview, because I was not expecting that at all. I was just because the guy who was who coordinated the interview, who was just he told me, he was like, it's time to wrap it up, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna just send it over to them, let they get their plugs in, and I'm gonna see my way out. And then, Vampiro just dropped that on me, and I was, of course, on the inside, I was freaking the hell out. But I played it cool on the outside. But it was just cool to hear, man. Like I really wasn't expecting that at all. So that was some, it's a nice little, self-esteem boost right there, man. It's always good to receive compliments and stuff like that. So that was something real cool and something I hold tight.
Yep, no, he gave you a great compliment, and I would suggest for anyone to go watch that on YouTube, because he did. He had some very kind words for you, and they were very warranted, Andrew, because you do a great job. And I'm not just saying that because you're on the podcast with me. I would tell you that, even if you weren't, and you do a fantastic job. Anything you got in the works here? Any upcoming interviews you want to talk about, or any other work that you have coming up?
You can check all my work is up on around my written work is up on Post Wrestling, of course, and as you graciously mentioned, I appreciate you plugging the YouTube channel. That means a lot, and I greatly appreciate that. And on Andrew Thompson Interviews on YouTube, and I do have an interview set up, but I always like to I'm big on what is it, not jinxing it. Yep. so I just like to keep until it's finally finished. Then I start talking about it. But I do have something lined up that I think people are like. It's not like I want. Well, I don't like to downplay my guests. I'm not gonna say it's like a super duper big. But it's something I'm interested in more so independent scene wise. I would say that, and that's something I'm always interested in, is covering people who are on the independent scene, which I kind of adore that a little bit. I always love talking to people that's on the independent. So, I think people will enjoy it, and, it'll be up next week.
Everybody has a story in wrestling. We know that, and usually always some fun twists along the way. So look forward to that. And yes, as Andrew said, be sure to check out his work, Andrew Thompson Interviews on YouTube. We'll link to it in the show notes and all that good stuff, and at Post Wrestling with John Pollock waiting over there. I've been listening to those guys for years and years and years, and Andrew's on there with them as well, in addition to the writing work he does. So check that out. And Andrew, listen, man, this was a lot of fun. Definitely going to have you back on again. I really appreciate you doing this.
Blake, I appreciate you asking me on, man. This is a real good conversation, man. And, hopefully we get to do this again.
Thanks again to Andrew Thompson of Post Wrestling and Andrew Thompson Interviews on YouTube for joining the podcast today. And just a quick reminder of what all we have going on over at 411mania.com. Of course, all of our live coverage of all the big shows throughout the week, all over at 411 Mania. You can check those out if you aren't already. Jeremy Thomas, Tony Acero, all those guys do a tremendous job. And be sure to check out all the columns, all the TV reports we have over at 411 Mania. And you can go back through if you want to check out some of the other stuff we have as well. Jeremy Thomas also reviewed Vampiro documentary, which we talked about with Andrew, and lots of other stuff, as always, over at 411 Mania. So thanks again to all of you for listening to this episode of the podcast. As I mentioned in the show notes, you can check out the GoFundMe that is still there for Larry's family. Continue to share that. Also, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or anywhere you download your podcasts. And if you like what you hear, head on over to Apple Podcasts and give us a nice 5-star rating review. That just helps the show reach more people. And again, thank you very much for listening to this episode of the 411 on Wrestling Podcast. Be safe, and we'll talk to you on the next episode.